My Hero Academia is one of the greatest mangas ever. You've all seen it in some form or another if you're a fan of Japanese culture. It is one of the best and most popular mangas and animes in history, beloved by people all over Japan as well as the rest of the world. Created by manga author Kohei Horikoshi stated that after his previous projects were not successful, he was sad and out of ideas. In order to get more ideas, he revisited a one-shot he previously published for Akumaru Jump, titled My Hero. Horikoshi was also a big fan of American films and comics like Spider-Man, directed by Sam Raimi, Star Wars, and the X-Men, which he used for inspiration. Horikoshi has also cited Dragon Ball, Ultraman, and Kamen Rider as sources of inspiration as well. And if you do follow the series, its main character shares a lot of traits with Spider-Man, and Kohei Horikoshi just kept trying to turn him into Spider-Man, honestly. So in 2014, he penned My Hero Academia for Shonen Jump, published by Shueisha. It couldn't have come at a better time, since the magazine at that point was struggling to find its newest hit, since Naruto had recently ended. After massive success came the idea for an anime. A producer for the manga picked the studio Bones to produce their anime, as they had wide reach internationally and produced high quality animation. And yeah, they were totally right. The anime is directed by Kenji Nagasaki and written by Yosuke Kuroda. The anime launched in 2016 and came over to the US in 2018 fully dubbed. I love this series. I'm not a massive fan of anime or manga, but I've always been a big superhero and comics fan, so when a close friend of mine recommended it to me, I figured why not check it out. And I was blown away at how invested I got into the story. No joke, by the end of Volume 2, I was hooked. And so was everyone else. My Hero is a massive hit, not only for Japan, but even more so in America, spawning a current 40 volumes of the manga, 7 seasons of the anime, not to mention spin-off manga, movies, specials, toys, and other media. The story has ended though, as Japan had finished producing the final chapter, so I wanted to talk about this series, and today we are looking at the first 4 episodes and eventually all of season 1. So without further ado, my name is Rocko from Ream Lore, and let's dive in. Also, consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed the video. Our first episode is Izuku Midoriya Origin. We open on the deadliest battlefield known to man, the playground. This is where we meet our main character Izuku Midoriya, or Deku as he will soon be referred to. Kid Deku, with tears in his eyes, gets ready to defend a kid from some bullies when my joke from before becomes reality, as the bullies have superpowers and the main bully says to him, "You don't stand a chance without a quirk," and they proceed to beat him up off screen, the most painful way to beat someone up. After that, we hear the defining line of the series, "Not all men are created equal." We get some more narration from Midoriya talking about how he is going to be a hero, and we cut to the future as Midoriya is graduating from middle school, now played by the very talented Justin Briner, who is also awestruck by a giant villain attack. We get our theme song, and yeah, they change up the theme a little bit, so I won't mention them that much, but just to let you know, they're all good, with all the anime charm of every anime you've ever seen. We then get Midoriya explaining in more detail the premise of the show. A long time ago, a baby was radiating light, being the first person to develop a mutation like that. After that, more people with superpowers started to pop up, dubbing these people as having quirks. This world became a superhuman society, with over 80% having some sort of quirk. With great power though comes great responsibility, and when you can bench press trains, it becomes too tempting to use these powers to do whatever you want. So with supervillains on the rise, the profession of superhero became very common. Back to the present, some superheroes show up to defeat the bad guy in some impressive fight scenes. Props to the animation team for this and all of the fights following this. The one thing I didn't like about the manga was that the fight scenes were a bit lackluster in the beginning. It wasn't until Stain showed up that we started to get some fun ones. Here though, man, are you guys in for a ride. The superheroes include Death Arms, played by Chris George, who is strong, Backdraft, played by Chris Bryan, who is a fireman, Kamui Woods, played by Aaron Roberts, who is a woodbender, and Mount Lee, played by Jamie Marchi, who can grow giant. You'd think with such a big cast they would have a bunch of people voice the characters, but everybody has their own individual voice actor or dubbed actor. I normally go in depth with a voice actor, but literally every single character in My Hero have their own individual voice actor, and even I have my limits. So I'll mention names I recognize, but that is where I draw the line. Ripping off the band-aid now, I'm watching the dub. I'm sorry, but I grew up with dubbed anime, and dubbing has improved massively since the 4Kids days, so deal with it. I'm not saying subbed is bad or that the original voice actors do a bad job, because they do a great job. It's just my inner child prefers the dub. While this fight is going on, however, everybody's super calm about it, chatting as if nothing was going on. They were all like, "Honey, my train is gonna be late. This guy is some amateur criminal. It's gonna be a minute." It really shows how common this sort of thing is. Midoriya on the side is geeking out, and to make him super relatable to anyone watching, he's a massive fanboy of superheroes. As Kamui is about to finish off the big bad, Mount Lady stole the final shot and then gets all the credit for the arrest. I like this because it shows that even though this world seems amazing, it's not perfect, as these heroes are fighting to see who can take out the bad guy first. This moment is also where I want to introduce something to make a point regarding this show, and that is the questionable counter. If you didn't know, at minor points in the series, they overly sexualize women for for comedic purposes. Now I'm gonna make it clear I don't usually have a problem with it, I'm not really a prude, and if this was happening to just the adults in the show I wouldn't care that much, but the fact that half the time it's sexualizing or perving on teenage girls, it just makes me a little uncomfortable and clashes with everything else going on in the show. So yeah, I love this series to death, but I was lying if it wasn't bad in a few spots. We add our first digit to the questionable counter. It goes up by 1 because Mountain Lady shows off her truck to the fans. Midoriya explains further that while quirks were popping up, the governments didn't know what to do and were too busy creating new quirk laws when there was a spike in superpowered crime. But then heroes started to pop up saving people, and because of that they were given authority by the government to be an expansion of law enforcement. With the asterisk that those who performed the most got all the fame and money. After the fight, Midoriya is writing down everything he saw and says he wants to be a hero more than anything. At Midoriya's school, their teacher is asking about what the kids in his school want to do with their lives, but stops himself as he knows they just want to be heroes, or more accurately join the hero track. It's here though where we see getting a quirk might not be the best thing ever, because there are some really lame ones, like having an inflatable head and the ability to stretch your eyes out. Out of the cheering though, the bully from the opening interrupts and says, "Don't lump me in with these losers." This is Katsuki Bakugo, and his character is basically I'm Teenage Vegeta, played by Clifford Chaplin. He goes on to say that his classmates would be lucky if they were sidekicks to some D-lister. Yeah, his personality is explosive hothead who doesn't care what other people think of him. It's then revealed that Bakugo is going to apply to UA High School, which is the national school with a 0.2% acceptance rate for the hero track. Now I want to say this real quick, originally Horikoshi wanted this to be a college, which explains why they're applying to a high school for some reason. But I think it was a producer or somebody who said the kids would relate to it more if the characters were high school students. And on some level I agree with that, but on the other hand it makes some creative decisions really awkward, which I will probably talk about some other time. Bakugo, with his really scary face, then says he's going to get into UA and become the richest, most famous hero of all time. The teacher then, for some reason, maybe he hates Midoriya, says to the entire class that Midoriya wants to apply as well, and then everybody starts laughing at him, and this is where we find out he doesn't have a quirk like everyone else. Bakugo then assaults Midoriya on school grounds, proving my theory the teacher hates him, and then Bakugo yells at Midoriya and says he is the worst of the worst and UA is never going to accept him. He also calls Midoriya Deku, which is a diss and something Bakugo has been calling him since they were kids. Midoriya cowers back and says he doesn't want to compete against Bakugo, but he still wants to try, and everybody laughs again. Back downtown, a sludge villain is stealing some cash when a muscular man arrives to chase the villain. With a big smile on his face, he says, "I am here." Back at school, Bakugo is still picking on Midoriya with his buddies and explodes Midoriya's notebook. Bakugo says that some people have it and others don't. When they look at him, they see greatness, but when they look at Midoriya, they see nothing, or Deku. He had to explain, if you rearrange the letters in Izuku, his first name, you get Deku, which is a shortened version of good for nothing. Bakugo says don't apply or else, and then says in the most casual tone possible, take a swan dive and maybe you'll be born a hero in your next life. Geez, that would not fly in an American superhero show. Later, Midoriya fished his book out of the water, and he flashed back to when he was a kid, watching the greatest hero of all time, All Might's debut, when he saved hundreds of people from a natural disaster. All Might then drops the famous line, "Fear not, citizens, hope has arrived because I am here." Midoriya was so inspired by this. When he got his quirk, he would be the greatest hero ever, just like All Might, when a doctor tells him he's not getting a quirk. This is Dr. Garaki, who is more of a background character here but becomes important later on. We learn that around 4 years old, kids develop one of their parents' quirks or a combination of the quirks, but an x-ray on Deku's foot shows since he has double joints on his toes, just like the 20% without a quirk, it's unlikely he will develop one himself. Midoriya's heartbroken over this and just watched the All Might video over and over again, and tearfully asks his mother if it's possible for him to be a hero like All Might, someone who saves people with a smile and never gives up, and his mom, Inko, played by Jessica Kavanaugh, says that she is sorry, but that's not what Midoriya needed to hear. Midoriya decided to press on and continue to try no matter what anyone said, which is when the sludge villain from earlier shows up and attacks Midoriya, planning on using him as a skin suit to escape. It looks like Midoriya is going to suffocate when All Might shows up and saves him without any issue, hitting the sludge villain with a Texas Smash, which is just blowing a burst of wind at the sludge villain. When Deku wakes up, he freaks out because All Might is there. All Might is just joking around as he reveals he captured the sludge villain in some soda bottles. All Might, real name Toshinori Yagi, is played by Christopher R. Sabat. He is a voice actor who has voiced Zoro from One Piece, as well as Yami from Black Clover, and Piccolo and Vegeta from Dragon Ball, as well as a million other things. He is a tremendous guy. Midoriya wants All Might to sign his notebook, but he already did. As All Might is about to leave, however, Deku hangs onto him in the most cursed drawing of the entire manga and anime series, where the wind is blowing past his face. While flying in the air, however, All Might coughs up some blood. They land on a roof and All Might tries to leave again, but Midoriya asks him the question he's been afraid to ask. He asks if it's possible to become a hero even if he doesn't have a quirk, ending the episode on a cliffhanger. And I was standing there like, Deku, haven't you heard of Batman or Black Widow, heroes who don't have any powers? They seem to do just fine. That brings episode 1 to an end, but how does it rank? How do my rankings work? Well, there are 4 criteria for my ratings. First is characterization. How characters are depicted factors greatly into the ratings. If they are clearly defined and showcased, then they rank higher. Second is story. How the story progresses from start to finish factors into the ratings. If it's dynamic and interesting, it gets a high score. If it's plotting and boring, it gets a low score. Third is entertainment. How fun something is plays a big part. If you're not enjoying what you're watching, there's no point in viewing. Fourth is importance. How necessary is it for you to watch? In our new world of streaming and rewatching, there's too much to watch. If something is noteworthy, it gets a high score. If it's something you can live with missing, it gets a low score. They will be judged in 5s, 5 being the best and 0 being the worst. However, on certain occasions, if I think something is truly noteworthy, I will go above or below certain parameters. If I think something is exceptionally good, I will give it a 6 or higher. If I think something is exceptionally horrendous, I will go lower than 0. Well, characterization could get a 6 for me. I feel like the characters were very strong here. I mean, Deku, his mom, All Might, Bakugo, everybody was great here and defined really well. The story gets a 5. It's a strong opener to the series, giving us a premise quickly, but also not, exposition dumping on us constantly. Entertainment gets a 3. It is pretty fun, although we don't get much action aside from the opening scene. It's still very entertaining. Importance also gets a 5. It is the opening scene that introduces us to our main characters, and it's really important that you watch. Moving on, we're heading on to episode 2, What It Takes to Be a Hero. Episode 2 starts off with their conversation on the roof, where All Might suddenly starts to collapse in pain with steam coming off him. Midoriya explains his whole backstory while this is happening, how people think he doesn't have a chance, with no powers he's a weakling, but he wants to prove them wrong. Midoriya has always believed saving people is the coolest thing ever. He wants people to see his smile and feel safe, and be the kind of hero that everyone looks up to. Ironically though, when Midoriya does look up, All Might has changed drastically. He's now a kind of skinny dude with spiky hair and sunken eyes, which causes Midoriya to freak out. Back in the alleyway, we see that Bakugo feels no remorse for assaulting Midoriya and telling him to jump off a roof as he kicks a bottle in the alleyway. Bakugo even says he hates it when Midoriya talks about heroes. Unfortunately for Bakugo, the bottle he just kicked was the sludge villain from before who attacks him. Midoriya thinks that this All Might is an imposter, but he proclaims he is All Might as blood flows out of his mouth. He says that his muscle form is like when guys at the pool are sucking in their guts and flexing trying to look buff. All Might then goes on to say that while he is a hero who smiles at any situation, there's plenty of fear behind it. He shows Midoriya a nasty scar under his stomach. His respiratory system was destroyed and he lost his whole stomach in a fight a few years ago. Now I assume he means he got a new stomach, but it took me a few seconds and I just thought he was the toughest guy ever. He says that the surgeries have worn him out and it can't be fixed, so right now he can only work for 3 hours a day. All Might says that this fight was a secret, as it has ties to him being the symbol of peace. That means people have to think he is never afraid, but he smiles to hide the fear inside because the job isn't easy. Some villains just can't be beat without powers, so All Might tells Midoriya that he doesn't think he can be a hero without a quirk. But I was sitting here like, All Might, you do know Batman and Iron Man, right? They don't have powers. In fact, a lot of villains in Marvel and DC don't have powers, they just make gadgets. All Might says that if Midoriya wants to help people, he should be a policeman, even if they don't do much because of the heroes, and that there's nothing wrong with having a dream, but you need to make sure it's attainable, and this shocks Midoriya to the core. Meanwhile, the sludge villain has taken Bakugo and is using his explosion quirk to cause some serious damage. Death Arms and all the other heroes from before show up to try and stop him, but none of them are suited for this situation. All Might arrives on the scene, but he ran out of time and can't transform or use his powers. Midoriya in the meantime finds himself at the sludge villain fight and realizes that All Might dropped the bottle because of him. All Might is berating himself as Midoriya is as well. That is until Midoriya sees Bakugo's eyes and how much he needed to be saved. That is when Deku sprinted into action backed by the most awesome theme song to ever grace anime, You Say Run. You Say Run is the best track in any anime. It's a super energetic, epic orchestral masterpiece, making whoever listens to it get the urge to run a marathon or punch the sky. It's so good. It was composed by Yuki Hayashi, who has done a ton of music work for other popular animes, but this is his magnum opus. I'm not kidding, I think this series got an entirely new fan base from this song alone. There was a whole movement on YouTube saying, You Say Run goes with everything. That wasn't true, as I'll show you in a later video, but it did fit the most epic moments in pretty much any great fight scene. Deku threw his backpack at the sludge villain, which blinded him enough to get to Bakugo, who couldn't believe he was there. Deku says that his legs just started moving as he tries to get the sludge off Bakugo. Deku says he couldn't just sit there and watch Bakugo die, which strikes a chord with All Might, who decides to help no matter the cost. As the sludge villain goes to kill Deku, All Might swoops in and stops him, pushing past his limit. All Might then goes totally overboard and hits the sludge villain with a Detroit Smash, which is so powerful it not only dissipates the villain and allows All Might to grab Bakugo, it also changes the weather patterns around them. That's right, it was so strong it literally moved the wind around, meaning that he could make it rain if he wanted to, with his fist! The villain is not dead, I didn't make that clear, he somehow survived, and everyone cheers because of course they do. The heroes yell at Midoriya saying he could have been killed because he doesn't have a quirk, but they praise Bakugo for his bravery and admire his powerful quirk. This is another example of quirk praise, where those with powerful quirks are hailed as saviors, while those with weak or no quirks are viewed as lesser citizens. This is incredible because it's actually the opposite of X-Men. In those stories, it's always the superpowered mutants who are viewed as monsters or lower class citizens, while here if you have a quirk, you are cut above the rest and the quirkless are tossed to one side. Bakugo couldn't give two hoots about the praise, however, he was just thinking about what happened with Midoriya. As Midoriya was walking home, Bakugo followed and screamed at him that he doesn't know him anything because he didn't do anything, he would never ask for his help because he is a weakling. He goes on to say Midoriya is nothing and that he won't even cut it as a beat cop. I love this guy so much. Midoriya is confused, as I would be. I mean, that is Bakugo's version of a thanks for trying, but Midoriya isn't thinking about that. Instead, he is really sad and has to get back to giving up on his dreams, which is when All Might appears. He changes back to his normal state before saying thank you, but he mostly came here to discuss his question from earlier. If it wasn't for Midoriya telling All Might about his life and his drive, as well as him jumping into action with no training or quirk, All Might would have been a worthless bystander and Bakugo might be dead right now. All Might says there are stories about many heroes and how they became great. Their bodies move on their own before they had a chance to think, just like Midoriya. Midoriya starts to cry as he falls to his knees. He thinks back to when he was a kid and he wanted his mother to tell him what All Might says to him right now, that Midoriya can be a hero. This scene is amazing, by the way. All the music and the lighting and the animation, it's just so good. This episode ends with Midoriya saying this is the story of how he became the world's greatest hero. That brings episode 2 to a close, and how does it rate? Well, characterization could get a 5. Everybody's super strong in this one as well. Bakugo even showing more sides to his personality. Story also gets a 5. It is a strong story showing that Midoriya does have what it takes to be a hero despite not having a quirk in what everybody tells him. Entertainment also gets a 5. It is so entertaining because of You Say Run just on its own. Like, You Say Run could just boost anything to a 4 on this list personally. Importance also gets a 5. It is mega important. It's when All Might tells him you can be a hero and really defines his and Midoriya's relationship. Moving on from that, we have Roaring Muscles episode 3. Episode 3 starts off with Midoriya going in depth about who All Might is. Basically this world's Superman. He is the world's most popular hero. His age is unknown for some reason, his quirk is unknown, and because of his abilities, he became the #1 hero. His presence alone dropped crime rates, which is a trademark Batman power. All Might claims that Midoriya is worthy of inheriting his power before going in depth on what his power is. His whole career, he had been dodging the question of what his quirk is. Most people just assume it's some sort of super strength or invulnerability. He does this because as the symbol of peace, he needs to be a hero born with a quirk like everyone else, when in reality, this power was given to him by someone else, and All Might wants to give it to Midoriya. This freaks out Midoriya, as up until now, giving someone a quirk is unheard of. All Might says that this power is called One for All. One person improves the power and gives it to the next person, each person making it stronger and stronger. All Might has been in search for a successor until he saw Midoriya run in without hesitation today, so he's chosen Midoriya. Midoriya starts to cry, which is a trademark for him as you've seen, when he stands up and says he will do this. Although as we'll see, it will be no easy task to get this power. All Might also calls him a quirkless fanboy here, and that is my new favorite insult. It makes no sense, but it's so funny. So after a whole conversation about All Might telling Midoriya he's worthy of inheriting his power, in the next scene he says Midoriya isn't worthy of inheriting his power. What he means is that Midoriya in his current state can't take his power. His body is too weak. Right now, his arms and legs would shoot off if he tried. That is why Midoriya is training on the beach, which is littered with junk from the ocean. So before he can get One for All, Midoriya must clean up the entire beach. Midoriya says that he wants to go to UA, so he has to prepare for the quirk in 10 months. So All Might prepped a schedule for him. Looking at the schedule, he has to get up at 4 a.m. and go to bed at 11. Jeez, that is rough. Which All Might confirms that this is going to be super hard. Midoriya doesn't care though, as working harder than his classmates has always been his thing. Thus, in Midoriya's words, he began 10 months of hell, and we get a montage of Midoriya training Rocky style. Although instead of running through Philly and punching meat, Midoriya is doing community community service. We stop the montage as Midoriya collapses while running with All Might. All Might figures out that Midoriya is overworked because during the montage he made alterations to the schedule which was fine-tuned with Midoriya in mind. Midoriya says in defiance that he has to work harder, otherwise he won't stand a chance, because he wants to be like All Might, the greatest hero in the world. All Might becomes inspired again and agrees to get Midoriya back on schedule. Then it was the morning of the exam, where back on the beach, Midoriya is doing his best Asta impression as he screams to the sun while on top of a mountain of trash. All Might is super impressed with this as Midoriya collapses and falls off the mountain of trash, but All Might catches him. All Might gives Midoriya a before and after shot of him from 10 months ago and him now. All Might then takes a lock of his hair from his head and tells him to eat it. All Might explains that to transfer the power, Midoriya has to swallow some of his DNA. I then think he force feeds it to Midoriya as I hear him scream when we cut to UA High School, where the entrance exam is taking place. While Midoriya is walking, he mentions how he doesn't feel any different when Bakugo shows up and insults him because that's his trademark. Midoriya is determined to pass the exam and get into UA when he falls down and a girl catches him with her levitating quirk. This is Uraraka, played by Lucy Christian, who is very nice to Midoriya and even makes small talk with him. Probably the first person other than All Might or his mom that treat him with any sense of kindness before she walks off. Everyone is gathered in the lecture hall as Bro Hero President Mike, played by Sony Strat, later played by Dave Trasco, explains the practical exam. We learn that there are two exams happening at once, with Midoriya going one way and Bakugo going the other way, as to make sure friends from the same school don't help each other. There are going to be robot villains everywhere ranging from 1 to 3 point values. You need to take them out and raise your score like a video game. Before Mike could explain more though, a student from the crowd interrupts and asks why there are 4 robots on the exam card. This is Ida, played by the very talented J. Michael Tatum, who is super enthusiastic about school and says that UA shouldn't make mistakes like this. Ida is also on the Midoriya hate train as he says that his muttering is annoying and that he should leave if he isn't going to take this seriously. Honestly, if you told me this show wasn't about superheroes or deep society themes, it was about berating and bullying Midoriya, I would have believed you. Mike tells him to calm down as he explains the 4th villain is worth 0 points. He's mainly just an obstacle. And this is where we get the school motto, go beyond plus ultra. That brings episode 3 to an end. Characterization gets a 5. The new characters are introduced very well. We get a feel for their personalities, but we know there's going to be more to them down the line. Story also gets a 5. It's nice seeing Midoriya train and finally get the power he earns through this training exercise. Entertainment also gets a 5. It's just kind of fun. I just like heroes doing hero stuff like cleaning up trash. It's just a personal favorite of mine. Importance also gets a 5. It is the episode where Midoriya gets 1 for all. Like, he doesn't use it here, but just getting it brings it up to number 5. And everything else is super important too. Lastly, we have Start Line, episode 4. We start off this episode with Midoriya telling us why getting into UA is so important. The best heroes around are alumni of UA High School. All Might, of course, but also the number 2 fiery hero, Endeavor, with the most arrests under his belt. Basically, if you want to be the best hero, you go to the best school. We open at the testing site, which is a fake city. That's right, they are so rich that they can afford to build fake cities. While Midoriya is freaking out, he sees Uraraka taking the same test as him. He also sees Ida is there, who continues to dunk on Midoriya by telling him not to distract Uraraka as she is preparing herself. The test starts, but we cut back to when Midoriya swallowed the hair. All Might says that his body needs to digest the DNA, but it should kick in before the exam, and warns him that even though his body can take it now, he did it in a hurry, so the backlash might be intense. Spoiler warning, All Might was underplaying that statement. Back to the exam, Midoriya runs into a robot and becomes paralyzed with fear, but is saved by another examinee blasting a laser at him. This is Aoyama, played by Joel McDonald, who can shoot a laser from his belly button. Midoriya runs around, but all the robots are smashed already. We get to see Uraraka's quirk as she can make things float, and Ida use the boosters on his legs to go super fast. We take a break from the action to see the teachers watching the matches and decide to send out the 0-pointers. Turns out they are giant robots the size of a Megazord. Midoriya is super terrified and tries to get away, but just as Midoriya is about to leave or get crushed, he turns around to see that Uraraka had gotten herself trapped under some rubble. She can't move as the robot inches closer. And this is when we get the moment that hooked me on the manga and show. Because as soon as Midoriya sees a person he met that day was in trouble, it didn't matter that he might fail the test. It didn't matter if he had a quirk or not. It didn't matter that he might die. He didn't hesitate for 1 second to run back to try and save her. In that moment, he's able to channel One for All and use his powers in his legs to jump up, yell from the depths of his heart, smash, as he punches the giant robot in the face and instantly destroys it. You Say Run also plays during this, and it is one of the best times it's used. It is just such a good moment. You feel so happy for Midoriya because of all the crap he had to endure his whole life. The reaction from everyone else is all time. Uraraka, Ida, and the contestants can't believe it. The teachers are super impressed, and All Might smiles at him like the proud father he is. Yes, I know they aren't related, but they might as well be. When Midoriya snaps back to reality, Mike says that there is 1 minute left, and this is when he realized, oh wait, I don't have control over this power and I'm 6 stories in the air. As he falls, he realizes that his right arm and legs are totally broken. Now that he has control over the power, he realizes that he can barely handle it without his body exploding. Just before he hits the ground, however, Uraraka slaps him in the face, so it's official. Everybody in this show so far at some point in some way crapped all over my man Midoriya. I'm only kidding though, she just did that to make Midoriya float, but it doesn't do him much good as the test ends shortly after he hits the ground and he passes out. Everyone is stunned by his power, but Iida's the only one who understands what he did. Midoriya basically threw away everything to save Uraraka while he himself just ran off. But this is when he remembers the teachers were watching and they saw that. If this was a point system, why did the teachers need to watch in real time? Before we get more of that though, we are introduced to Recovery Girl, the school nurse, an elderly woman who has the power to heal people with her kisses. She's played by Julie Erickson here, but is eventually replaced by Lucy Christian, who also plays Uraraka. She heals Midoriya right up as she is the only reason they can hold these reckless exams. Uraraka almost got crushed. I'm pretty sure some kisses aren't going to fix that. Later that night, Midoriya is really stressed out about the exam, how he didn't get even 1 point and he can't get in touch with All Might now. Then he does get his test results, a video message from All Might, who reveals he will be teaching at UA High School this semester. He says Midoriya passed the written exam, but he got a 0 points on the practical. Midoriya starts to break down until All Might reveals that Uraraka went to the faculty and explained that the only reason Midoriya didn't get any points was because he was trying to save her, and begs them just to give him her points so he could pass. Before that though, she caught the curse and roasted him by saying he's kind of plain looking and doesn't stand out. But she said it earnestly, which is more than Bakugo's swan dive comment. This is when All Might does confirm that the teachers were also grading on rescue points, and for rescuing Uraraka and everyone else, Midoriya got 60 rescue points, and for saving Midoriya, Uraraka got 45 rescue points, so they both passed. All Might showed him this so that he could see his actions inspire others. This brings Midoriya his trademark tears as All Might says he is part of the Hero Academia, which bookends the episode. And we also see his mom hook up the acceptance letter on the fridge, which is just a great way to end the episode. Characterization gets a 5. Everybody's super strong in this episode. Uraraka shows more depth, Iida shows more depth, and it's just great all around. Plus Midoriya is a standout as always. Story gets a 5. It is so good the way this is all set up with him saving Uraraka like that. Entertainment also gets a 5, as I said. You say run can boost anything, but the fact he uses it in one of the best sequences ever when he saves Uraraka by punching the 0-pointer, it's just so cool. Importance also gets a 5. This is super important. He gets accepted into UA and with the crucial information that All Might is going to be teaching him there. Like, that is super important. That's where we're going to end things today, however. I am going to review the rest of My Hero Season 1, and if you like this video, I shall look at the entire series because this is honestly some of the best superhero content I have ever seen. I mean, these first 4 episodes aren't super extraordinary, but they're really charming and set the tone for the series. Along with fun characters and an intriguing premise, the great moments like Midoriya smashing the 0-point robot are all-time awesome moments that I will always look back on with fondness. And my friends, this series would reach new heights as more chapters rolled out to show us this was going to be one of the best series to ever come out of Japan. With that said, I'm Rocko from Remore. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.